Welcome to the DMZ America podcast, where all financial proceeds go to two fully American cartoonists. I am Ted Rall, coming to you from the left.
I'm red, white, and blue Scott Stantis, coming to you from the right.
And I would do white and red also, but I'm mostly blue, I guess, in our current environment. Although I have to say, Scott, the fact that red became associated with Republicans always made me laugh, because I always thought, as a creature like you of the Cold War, that red was associated with the left.
How did this happen? It really pisses me off because I still stumble on it. I mean, you can listen to a bazillion of our podcasts and I still go, oh, blue state. And there's Ted. You mean red state? Yeah. Oh, crap. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, because I'm with you. Red always meant the Reds, right? Better.
I think it was a CNN electoral map, and there was no particular thought put into it. And some graphic designers just did it that way for no particular reason, and that's how it ended up that way.
Still pisses me off because
it's dumb. It's really dumb. I mean, like, I love why the left is the left and why the right is the right. Do you know the answer to that?
No.
It's where the political parties sat in the first French Parliament during the French Revolution. So
really,
all the parties with the pro-populist redistribution of wealth, anti-monarchist orientation were on the left side, and conversely, the forces of conservatism were on the right side.
Once again, we have to thank France for something.
Oh, yeah, like that and all the good food. All right, so but here in America, where we do things the dumb way, the Supreme Court, the gift that keeps on giving these days, is set to rule on another major case, this one involving the Second Amendment with the right to bear arms. And basically what the majority has agreed to hear is a case involving a dude named Zaki Rahimi. He was convicted under a 1994 law that prevents anybody who's subject to a restraining order for domestic violence, because he assaulted his girlfriend. And this law in Texas, federal law, did not permit anybody who was under the effect of a restraining order to possess a firearm. He went to court, challenged his conviction on the grounds that the law violated the Second Amendment, and won. He has gone all the way to federal district court. The Biden administration is fighting this case, and so that's where we are. I think people may be surprised where you and I each stand on this, Scott.
Okay.
I personally, I side with the girlfriend beater. I think even though I stipulate that he's an asshole, being an asshole doesn't deprive you of your constitutional rights. And so as long as we have a Second Amendment, something that we could easily discuss repealing, and I think something that we would not have if we had a brand new constitution today, we would not have a sweeping Second Amendment the way that it was written and the way that it's been interpreted. Given that fact, you can't just sort of say, like, well, people who don't cut their lawns, or people who don't drive safe, or you could say, for example, I mean, I could make all sorts of prohibitions. If we find that you've overdosed on drugs over 5 times, you shouldn't be allowed to own a gun. If you have been arrested for DUI, you should not be allowed to own a gun. If you've ever committed an armed robbery, you should not be allowed to own a gun. These would all make sense. I could make a strong case for all of them. But the fact is, that's not the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment says the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. It doesn't say the right to bear arms shall not be infringed unless you're an abusive boyfriend.
Yeah, but there is common sense here, Ted. I mean, people are going to be surprised how we're arguing and what side we're on this one. I can see why you would say if you have been convicted of domestic violence, then the chances are, and the statistics would bear you out, that handing you a gun is a very, very, very bad idea, especially for your comrade, your partner. I think that you can have restrictions on gun ownership. I really do. And I think that we better start moving in that direction. You and I have talked about the Second Amendment and how the thing that drives me nuts is talking to my, limousine liberal friends who are, well, we should just, we can just have laws. I go, well, why don't you just, work on rescinding the Second Amendment, which we've done. We've rescinded other amendments. Oh, we can't do that. Why not? You just wouldn't be able to do that. So your argument that, and I quote, a vast majority of Americans don't like the Second Amendment. You don't think that's enough. You don't trust democracy enough to go forward and get rid of the Second Amendment. And the answer is they're too lazy. Remember the Million Mom March? I'm sorry, I'm going to diss on these people for just a moment.
714 Mom March?
Yeah, well, whatever it was. And that was going to be, do you remember they promised this was going to happen every year?
Yeah.
Happened 1 year in a row. I really have to giggle at the left in this country. I know it makes you roll your eyes and want.
Why would you giggle at something that doesn't exist?
Well, it does exist, but they're lazy. They're just friggin' lazy. Remember the monthly protests against Donald Trump? Do you remember every month those protests? Oh, wait, they didn't fucking happen because they're too fucking lazy.
Should be like France. It should.
Yes. If you truly believe that the Second Amendment is stupid, and I would be one of them, I understand why it was put in there. I understand its history.
I would be one of them too. Look, I think the Second Amendment should be. First of all, I think this law is a great idea. I think absolutely any kind of person like that should not be allowed to possess a firearm. It's terrifying as shit. It's an effort to protect people who are in abusive relationships. It's a great law. It's just that it's unconstitutional. So the solution to keeping your great law is to make it constitutional. And to do that, you have to repeal the Second Amendment.
Yeah, which I don't know. I mean, what pisses me off when you have this discussion, I know you have it with your lefty friends too, Ted, when you talk about this issue. Have you ever talked to them about?
It just happened with the affirmative action decision that came down from the Supreme Court, where I kept saying, look, racism obviously is a huge, big, important, pressing, ongoing problem that needs to be addressed in a very serious, forthright way. But affirmative action based on race was always a clumsy, oafish solution to this problem. And it was deeply unfair to the white people and Asian people who were fucked over by it. And they'd always just say, well, yeah, but we have to do something. And it's like, yeah, I'm suggesting that you do something else. Class-based affirmative action. Oh, well, we couldn't do that. That would be too hard. It's like, we couldn't get that through. Or like abortion, right? And I said, well, anyway, I was like, the thing about the affirmative action as Harvard and the University of North Carolina were doing it, is that it did violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. There's no question about that. Yeah, but something had to be done. Something else that doesn't violate the 14th Amendment.
Yeah, exactly. I love the class. I mean, that's exactly, you and I would agree that a class,
Newt Gingrich used to say that, and he was right.
Yeah, because poverty, because you mentioned on this podcast before, you mentioned it on your radio show, rich Black families were getting we're taking advantage of affirmative action, which is absurd.
And the U.S. Supreme Court, in their decision, if you read it, they did provide that guidance to colleges and universities, saying we will be okay if you switch this to class-based. It'll be fine.
But the left today, I'm sorry, they're a bunch of wusses. They're a bunch of lazy assholes. I mean, it's just like,
well, could you imagine? Roe v. Wade look at what they've been doing about abortion. Nothing. There hasn't been there is not one major, that was a year ago, Scott. There hasn't been one major pro-choice protest since the Dobbs decision.
You and I love history. Could you imagine going back in history? Could you imagine the American Revolution, the gunplay actually begins in 1775. It doesn't end until 1781. So that's 6 years. I mean, nine
of mayhem.
Of like really bad stuff. Could you imagine George Washington just going after the first battle going, this is going to be hard. I'm just going to go home. Could you imagine the French Revolution? Okay, now we march to Versailles. And you go, that's where? That's really far.
Yeah, it's on these shitty roads. It's summer. Hot.
Yeah, no, God, no. Maybe, no.
I know. We'll just post some funny memes about King Louis XVI on
And
Facebook.
maybe a flash mob once in a while. Could you imagine the Russian Revolution? The Bolsheviks are like, oh,
Comrades.
you have nothing to lose but your, oh, look, it's lunchtime.
Oh my God. Yeah. That borscht isn't going to eat itself.
I mean, that's why the right is so emboldened to do so many of its batshit crazy bullshittery these days, because they have nothing, zero, nada to fear. In the 60s, the 70s, when the Democratic Party and the Democratic Party had a significant progressive wing to it, they didn't fear the right, because frankly, the Republicans and the right were pretty impotent, kind of in the same position. But now that's flopped. So I see absolutely no hope in overturning the Second Amendment. I see no hope in any, and until that happens, I think Ted is right in a practical standpoint. Doesn't mean I agree with it, but the courts are going to rule in favor against any kind of gun regulations, because it flies in the face of the Second Amendment. Boom.
Yeah. And I think there we go. All right. So
Okay.
let's leave that there and
Okay.
stay with us. And we'll be right back in 2 shakes of a very cute gray cat's tail.